Tonight, high risk. The emergency response team executes a search warrant in Dawson Creek. And some hot water. The BC Wildfire Service is under the microscope. And major surprise, a local man wins big on a scratch and win. Good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with the police executing a high-risk search warrant in Dawson Creek. The emergency response team from Prince George securing a duplex on 116th Avenue. The police had the neighborhood blocked off Tuesday afternoon. Officers at the same house that was secured last month as part of the Emily Ogden murder investigation. Now, it's not clear if anyone was home at the time, police leaving the scene without making an arrest. Investigators were back at the home today. CJDC-TV News has learned one of the people living at the house was one of the two people questioned by Mounties in April, just after Ogden's body was found in Eris. Her death is part of an ongoing drug war in Dawson Creek that's seen 10 people murdered over the last 2 years. The Dawson Creek RCMP are not able to comment on the case as the investigation is being led by E-Division in Surrey. Well, the BC Wildfire Service could be in some hot water over a planned fire ignition that went wrong 2 years ago. WorkSafe BC says a group of firefighters could have been killed in the Shuswap region. Reports say the Brazilian firefighters became trapped by extreme fire behavior while working on the planned burn at the height of fire season. The documents reveal they were forced to shelter in an open area below power transmission lines where they parked their truck. WorkSafe BC says the Wildfire Service did not adequately ensure the workers' safety, and the agency adds it is now considering appropriate enforcement action against the Wildfire Service. Well, a fire broke out at a log cabin business near Williams Lake, leaving charred destruction in its wake. Multiple fire departments were called to Pioneer Log Homes after the fire broke out. Crews tackled the blaze for nearly 12 hours before finally putting it out around midnight on Monday. What sparked the fire remains unclear, but BC Wildfire Service says it's believed to be human-caused.
Approach the site going south, you could see this massive wall of flames. It must have been shooting probably 50 to 100 feet high, probably 600 or 700 feet long. It was just right beside the highway. It was intense. It was hot.
Beginning today, open fires other than campfires are banned in the Caribou region. In an effort to improve public safety, the province conducting a BC-wide test today of its emergency alert system. Now, this afternoon at 1:55, residents in BC heard the alert from their TVs, their smartphones, their radios. The province sending it out. It clearly labeled test alert in a manner trying not to alarm British Columbians. The test comes amid a country-wide campaign during what is Emergency Preparedness Week. Premier David Eby is under fire tonight for heated comments he made about the accused murder in the Filipino festival attack in Vancouver. The Premier said the suspect should spend the rest of his life in jail, even though he has yet to stand trial. Well, the Canadian Bar Association is now raising concerns that Eby's comments are fostering distrust of the justice system. The association is deeply concerned the Premier is expressing opinions on legal outcomes prior to a trial. Well, the Premier has since apologized, saying he is confident the independence of the court will not be influenced by his feelings about the suspect. Adam K. Gillot is facing 8 counts of second-degree murder, and police have said more are expected. The province is taking steps to sniff out invasive mussels and keep them out of British Columbia.
He's highly intelligent, but focused on work.
Well, that's Major, an 8-year-old German Shepherd. He can detect the smell of mussels when conservation officers can't see them. Invasive mussels have been located in other parts of Canada and the United States. They can be destructive and costly. The province also introducing legislation that says boats being transported around the province now have to stop at inspection points. And the province unfairly forced some British Columbians to repay money they received during the COVID-19 pandemic. BC's ombudsperson says the provincial government required some workers to repay the $1,000 they received after losing their jobs during the pandemic. The BC Emergency Benefit for Workers was introduced back in 2020. In an effort to work quickly, the BC government initially required recipients to also be receiving the federal Canada Emergency Response Benefit. But the province was unaware that some of those people were being paid through other federal benefits, including employment insurance. Those applicants were then ordered to repay the funds. The report says during a crisis, the public can't be held accountable because of how a federal benefit claim was processed behind the scenes. Well, the report also found some eligible workers were told to repay money, even though they met all of the criteria. At the sexual assault trial of 5 former world junior hockey players, a second defense lawyer began cross-examining the complainant today. The lawyer for Carter Hart questioned how much the woman had to drink at Jack's Bar in London, Ontario in June of 2018. The defense said, so it would surprise you to learn that there's maybe half as much alcohol in Jack's Jägerbomb than you normally get. The woman replied, that does surprise me. I thought it would be kind of the same everywhere. Well, the woman says she had 8 of those drinks and several others during the night before the alleged assault took place in a hotel room. All 5 men are charged with sexual assault. They've all pled not guilty. One day after Mark Carney met with Donald Trump, the Prime Minister briefed the premiers and territorial leaders. They talked about what was discussed in the meetings and where things stand. CTV's Michael Couture has more on the call and the path forward.
A day after the historic meeting in the Oval Office, the Prime Minister is getting high praise from premiers for how it went.
I don't think I'd have the restraint that he had yesterday, to be very frank.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford applauded Prime Minister Carney for what he called a successful meeting in Washington. In a 75-minute call between the premiers and the Prime Minister today, Ford says there was a sense of unity amongst the leaders.
I was pretty blunt. I said, you know, it's time that your government starts showing some love to Saskatchewan and Alberta, because as I said, like, the last Prime Minister showed no love. Matter of fact, to the contrary.
But that unity is being tested in Alberta, where Premier Danielle Smith has spoken about a referendum on separation. On CTV's Power Play with Vashi Kapelos, Smith said she wouldn't stand in the way of secession.
What I have said is that I will respect the outcome of citizen-initiated referenda, and that's why it's my job to make sure it doesn't get to that point.
Premier Ford said Carney asked premiers to give him a list of 5 priorities on large national infrastructure projects. Ford says it's time to build pipelines across the country using Ontario steel, a sentiment echoed by Alberta's premier, but she's watching the Prime Minister's next move.
This is something that we will get an indication of very quickly, of whether or not he's willing to turn the page on the past 10 years and move forward in a different direction. And I'm hopeful that he does. I think it would be nation building, and I think it would be unifying.
The work to keep all of the premiers on the same page will continue at the next First Minister's meeting in Saskatchewan on June 2nd. And the Prime Minister's office confirms Carney will be there. Michael Couture, CTV News, Ottawa.
The RCMP in Nova Scotia saying tonight, search efforts for Lily and Jack Sullivan, missing since May the 2nd, will be scaled back. 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack are believed to have wandered from their home in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. RCMP there say a full-scale multi-agency search will now transition to a smaller, more focused search. They will also return to some areas already searched to see if any clues were missed. So far, tens of thousands of hours have been dedicated to scouring the region with over 100 trained volunteers. Well, black smoke emerged from the Vatican earlier today, which means no decision yet on who will be the next pope. Many Canadians are among the world's 1.4 billion Catholics who are watching as history is being made. CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin is in Rome and has this report.
In a world of high-tech telecommunications, eyes turn to smoke signals. Black, indicating no choice was made. The cardinals will return to the task of selecting the man who will be pope. The conclave began after a solemn procession into the Sistine Chapel, when cardinals swore an oath and famous words were spoken.
Extra omnes.
Meaning out everyone. The 133 voting cardinals are now cut off from the world. The day began with a mass. Cardinals from 70 countries, the most diverse group in history, including 4 from Canada, prayed for the help of the Holy Spirit. So that, said Cardinal Giovanni Battista, the Pope elected may be the one the Church and humanity need at this difficult and complex time in history. Father John Perdue from Ontario is studying in Rome. Back in 2013, when Pope Francis was chosen, he was a seminarian at St. Augustine in Scarborough.
Excitement is definitely contagious. Like, you can feel it. In the seminary, people were yelling in the halls, "White smoke, white smoke."
Now he's at Sant'Agostino in Rome, awaiting that same smoke.
There's many people, like I say, who wish they were here, so I'm trying to sort of, carry them in my heart.
The Cardinals have returned to their living quarters at Santa Marta for the night, knowing now who has gotten more votes.
They caucus, they talk, and they think, which of these do I think would make the best Pope?
4 secret ballots can be held per day as of tomorrow until the crowd at St. Peter's Square sees white smoke.
Since 1939, there hasn't been a conclave that has lasted more than 3 days. But of course, we have very few clues as to what's happening inside. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Rome.
Pakistan and India appear to be on the brink of war. It follows a major escalation between the two neighbors that both have nuclear weapons. The volatile situation intensified after an attack on tourists, which India blames on Pakistan, followed by retaliation. CTV's Abigail Beeman has more.
Early this morning, India launched a series of missile strikes in Pakistan and Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. Panic spread and we were told to leave, says this witness. Pakistan claimed it shot down 5 Indian warplanes, while the Prime Minister called India's strikes an act of war and vowed retaliation.
Crossing the international boundary, this is the clear-cut violation and invitation to expand the conflict.
India claims it only targeted militants. The overall death toll now in the dozens, with casualties on both sides. Tensions began after India blamed Pakistan for supporting a deadly tourist attack on the Indian-controlled side of disputed Kashmir, which Islamabad denied. It's the biggest escalation between the two nuclear-armed neighbors in decades.
There have definitely been fears when mediation's taken place. And one of the dangers now is that there's no real mediator to step up.
The Canadian government already had advisories in place for India and Pakistan, telling travelers to exercise a high degree of caution. In the last 24 hours, it issued updates, warning the airspace may close over India and already has over Pakistan, and the situation could deteriorate rapidly.
Good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
This all unfolding in one of the most dangerous and populous regions in the world. The Indian Prime Minister has yet to speak publicly. One expert tells CTV News if Narendra Modi believes his point has been made and India appears as a major power, it may be a hope for de-escalation. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Ottawa.
Well, holy bleep. That was the reaction from a Dawson Creek man after checking his scratch and win ticket. Bradley Field was leaving the Co-op Mall when he decided to stop and buy a $10 scratch and win. Well, when he got home, he scanned the ticket on the app, and much to his surprise, he won $125,000. Field's fiancée was sitting next to him at the time. He said she was shocked and stunned, and there was lots of bleeping. Field plans to pay off his mortgage, maybe take a dream vacation to Australia. Congratulations to Bradley. That is fantastic. All right, stay tuned. I'll be right back with weather coming up after the break.